story earlier this week in the Northern Territory, which has become the first jurisdiction in Australia to ban transgender women from being sent to women's prisons. It follows a revelation last week that a woman was allegedly sexually assaulted after sharing a cell at Port Augusta prison with a transgender prisoner in 2019. Then more recently, a 25-year-old father who sexually abused his 5-year-old daughter was placed in a Victorian female correction centre after he identified as a woman. South Australian Senator Leah Blyth joins us on 5AA Breakfast. Senator, good morning to you.
Good morning to you.
Thanks for joining us, Senator Blyth. This should be a no-brainer, shouldn't it? I mean, on what planet does a person who until recently was a bloke end up saying, and you know, they're in jail, like they are by definition deprived of their liberties. How on earth do we end up putting female prisoners in danger, as has now happened in two cases, by maintaining this bizarre policy?
And I think that's exactly right. We've got an issue with safety in women's prisons across the country, and it's been extremely irresponsible of state governments to have known sex offenders in cells with females. And I think, you know, this is a clash of rights, and women's rights should not come second in this case. So common sense has to prevail here, and biological reality has to be recognised in our law and in risk assessment.
Do you think there's a sort of weird reluctance on the part of some in politics, be it out of, I don't know, some sort of progressive politeness or not wanting to be seen to weigh into the culture wars? They seem to regard things like this actual attack on a female prisoner as being invisible in a policy sense. They don't even want to engage on it. Like Malley was asked about it the other day and he said, ask the Correctional Services Minister.
That is crazy. We need a Premier here who is going to be strong on safety. We need strong policy that's going to keep our community safe, and particularly women in the community. So, you know, I'm calling on our Premier to follow suit with Leah Blyth in the Northern Territory, who has shown courage that no other leader across the country has shown, where she's happy to weigh in on this, which is an incredible step, and I applaud her for that. But women do not come second to ideology, and I would say that to our Premier in South Australia. This is not an opt-in conversation. So we need strong policy. We need a courageous Premier who is going to look past ideology, look at biological reality, and start recognising that in law and protect women. Women are entitled to be safe in their own space for their own safety.
Is there a broader problem here, though? Because my understanding, it was actually this ex-man, now woman prisoner, was actually housed in a female jail during the Marshall Liberal government. So is there a broader problem here that maybe, and it could be because of the anti-discrimination laws, that once someone puts up their hand, even without necessarily going fully down the physical path of changing gender and doing all the hormonal stuff and what have you, but maybe if they almost identify as a different gender, and they're probably doing it for all sorts of tactical reasons, because maybe female prisons are more pleasant to stay in than male prisons. But is there perhaps a sense that government's hands are tied with this?
And I refute that argument that governments are using, because safety is within the legislation, that for safety reasons you are able to discriminate, if that makes sense. So I think that is just convenient for policymakers to be able to stand behind that. But safety is an aspect, and that's how we can have women's only sports. And you will see that some of those sporting codes and associations around the country are now starting to exclude trans men from women's sporting competitions for safety reasons. And that's what we're asking all governments across the country to do, is men should be excluded from female prisons for female inmate safety.
Well, I've got to say on this issue, I couldn't agree with you more. I just think it just makes you shake your head in disbelief that it's even happening. Leah Blyth, Liberal Senator for South Australia. The state government should fix this up. I think what the NT chief...
Authorised by Leah Blyth, Liberal Party, Hilton SA.